All right. We are going to start in 1 Thessalonians this morning, but before we really jump in, I wanted to do something this morning to just help set the tone for the approach here. Just as a quick reminder of things we covered last week, we're talking about a church community that is new. It's gone through a lot, and this is a result of Paul and Silas and others who are traveling, end up in Thessalonica, and you have, it's so interesting because the church, the timing, everything was just perfect and right for a society in which it's something that could be planted and would grow and, to at least to a degree, could flourish. And so if it wasn't for those Jews within the Thessalonica community who were envious of what was happening, I think the church probably would have continued to grow, at least for a short time, maybe even longer, without really any sort of pressures, the kinds of pressures that they experienced, okay? Because Roman communities, cities, were very welcoming to lots of different ideas and thoughts and things of this nature. The line would be drawn where they would distinguish themselves or separate themselves from social expectations, okay? And by, in other words, not doing the things that you would be expected to do as a citizen. But I just want to point that out, that the main reason why they're going through what they go through is because of these Jews who were envious, okay? If that wasn't the case, I don't know. I'm not convinced that it would have been as hard for them at first, okay? So, remember, you have the beginning of this community successful. You have some Greeks, and you have prominent women, and then you have some Jews who were convinced and followed Paul and established this small community. And not long after that, right, we're talking about a few months, these Jewish leaders become very envious, and they're going to do everything they can. And they're going to utilize right on the back of the system, okay, that the city of Thessalonica was dependent upon to exist. And so trying to utilize the powers that be to address this situation that they are not comfortable with at all. So much so that whenever Paul and Silas leave the city and they find out they're in Berea, these same Jewish leaders do what? They follow them. They go to Berea and try to do the same thing, okay? So keep that in mind. So before we really get into this, just a few interesting facts to take note of as you read 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. I will tell you this, more than likely we're not going to be going verse by verse. I'm not going to sit here, we're going to go, okay, that's not how this is going to go, but I want to encourage you to familiarize yourself with these letters. They're very short, doesn't take long. Just continue to memorize. Continue to remember to read through these things. Just familiarize yourself with the context here, okay? And it'll make our discussions a little bit easier. So some interesting facts about 1 Thessalonians. So as you read through it, pay attention to these things. Thessalonica was a free city, loyal to Rome. Okay, what does that mean? It meant its leaders were very anxious to avoid anything that looked like rebellion. In other words, they were left alone. Okay? So, whenever Paul and Silas, or whenever the mob comes in, they try to arrest some. Remember, they arrest Jason and some of the other people. What's the accusation? One of the main accusations that they lay down. Okay, yeah. They have disobeyed Caesar's decree, right? By proclaiming another king being Jesus. That language is political treason, okay? That's a serious claim, okay? And so if you have a city that's trying to do everything it can, leaders who are anxious to make sure that they don't do anything to make Rome angry, to disrupt anything, and this is the claim, you think that's a trigger? Yeah, and if you know that, do you think you could use that as a way to manipulate the system? Yeah. Right, exactly, right? So, so this may explain part of why Paul's letter, as you see in 1 Thessalonians, why it's written the way that it is. It emphasizes a quiet faithfulness, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 11, okay? You're not going to find revolutionary rhetoric in this letter, okay? A little bit different than some of Paul's other letters, but you're not going to find language like that. And in fact, when you look at Jesus' return, it's framed as divine vindication and not human uprising, okay? And that's very interesting. Because what Paul is doing here is forming people, forming a community whose allegiance is to Jesus without triggering, okay, Roman crackdowns. I believe the language here is very intentional, is my point, okay? In light of what they're going through, Paul is not bringing in anything that's going to bring in more pressure. There's a reason why I believe he starts this letter the way that he does. Spends the first, what we call first 3 chapters, really celebrating and building up, right? Reminding them of who they are, who they already are. He's not doing anything. There's no pressure here, okay? And I think that's intentional. I think that's on purpose, okay? The other thing to take note of here is that Paul would have been seen as a leader, and he is modeling a different type of leadership as well, which goes back to the whole disruption that takes place when you have a community, a new kind of community being created that looks a little different, that plays by different rules, if you will. They're wrestling with what's socially acceptable. You're talking about reorienting identity. That's all disruptions. It's internal disruptions and external disruptions, okay? It's the reason behind you see the things unfold the way they do. People get angry, upset, envious, getting mobs together, trying to arrest, make accusations, so much so that it's like they're turning the world upside down, okay? This is really, really disruptive. But you're going to see a little bit more of that in Paul's letter. The way that he even presents himself could be potentially disruptive. It's challenging at the very least. What it looks like to be a leader and what people should expect from a leader. It's very fascinating here. He talks about what he did not do, which is very interesting. Okay? That's very interesting. Why might that be interesting from a leadership standpoint, especially in the first century? Say that again? Not what they expect. Right, what would they be expecting? Yeah, right? Authoritarian type. You tell us what to do, right? They would be expecting you to act like a patron even, really about status. Like there's a certain thing or certain response or expectations that they would have of their leaders, which would identify them as leaders, okay? But Paul does something a little bit different here. He says, listen, this is what we did not do. 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 5, we did not come with flattery. What does that mean? We did not come with flattery. We did not seek glory from people. Verse 6. Glory, think honor, right? Prestige, right? We were gentle among you. Became like he talks about how they treated them like little children, and various translations translate this differently in verse 7. So you might get a few different things from here. But it seems like he's saying, listen, we came and you took us in like we were children. And then he says, we turn around and we treated you like a mother would treat their children, like a father would treat their children, caring for their own. So there's, what kind of language is that? Loving. Yeah. What else?
It seems like he's really making a point that, like, we were just staying in our lane.
Okay. What'd you say? Family. Remember, what's being established here? A community of people, a new kind of community. And the language that he's using sets a different tone, right? And the very fact that, and people will argue this, but the very fact that he uses the term church for church, which in the Roman world was literally an assembly, okay, would point to the fact that it is an established, recognized thing. And Paul uses familial language, family, right? Which is important, so pay attention to that. This language would have been shocking. It could have been, I think, shocking. Leaders were expected to be authoritative, like a patron, status conscious, right? Uphold their role. I have something to give to you. You honor me. I bless you. There's always strings attached to stuff, okay? But it's like Paul's redefining leadership. And it's about relational presence, not control. That's different. Relational presence, not control. What do we mean by that? Relational presence. Okay, we're a team, right? How did we act among you? How did we present ourselves among you? What was it like for us all to be together in the same place? How would you mark our time together? That's what he focuses on, right? And notice he was present, relational presence. He goes back to those memories and those moments, okay? He's not sitting on, the hill shouting out commands from a distance, right? He brings it near and intimate, okay? He's not issuing commands necessarily, right? That's not where he goes. He talks about what they shared and this shared life that they had. And this is what this community is being based off of. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. So I just find that interesting, right? He goes back to the challenges in creating this new kind of community. And the very fact that Paul presents himself this way, okay, could have been, and I believe was, countercultural. And that goes back to, remember we talked about what are the challenges that come with trying to create a new kind of community. And when we say a new kind of community, it's not like the larger community. It doesn't play by the same rules. I don't like using it, but you know what I mean by that, right? The values even seem to be different. The things that matter seem to be different. It's disruptive. But it's not just disruptive because, they're not going to the marketplaces or they're not going to the marketplaces and doing X, Y, and Z, or they're not joining the processions honoring whatever god it was, or they're not burning incense to honor the benefactor or Caesar or whatever. Okay, there's also internal disruption. Did they struggle with what was going on? Yeah, like especially when you go to the second letter, because the intensity just kind of ramps up, and they're struggling. There's some doubts. They're wrestling with things. Now, just from the human standpoint, you're a human being, are you not? They were human beings, were they not? We could assume that they have the same experiences that we have, or experience life in the world the same way we do, right? Do you think there would have been some internal challenges for you being in that community, dealing with the pressures that were coming at you as a result of your allegiance to Jesus? 100%, right? And so then you have a leader, someone you're who's going to help. Like, no doubt, they would look at Paul and look to Paul for guidance, because at the end of the day, they could easily step aside and say, look what you've done. This is your fault. Like, I'm in this because of you, right? But they're looking to Paul, and Paul presents himself in a different light, in a different way. He addresses the situation differently, and I think it would have been maybe caught them off guard, shocking even, right? Like, and challenging even how they maybe how they're supposed to even view and what they should expect from the Apostle Paul or other leaders, okay? So there's some of the disruptions would have been internal as well, right? Do you think that you would have had any sorts of anxieties? Like you change your allegiance to Jesus, and you're going through all of these transformations that are happening, these experiences, and it's wonderful and it's great, and all of a sudden there's all this pressure, and you're like, okay, I can't deny this, but man, I don't like that, and it's coming in at you, right? You think there's any tension there? Would there be some tension there? Would that create any sort of anxieties inside of you? Questions, doubts, concerns, fears, all the things that we today experience without those types of encounters, or as severe? You think? Yeah. That's going to be on display, and I think that's the reason why you're going to see the Apostle Paul say some of the things that he says. Okay, Paul?
Paul is a disavowed Jew who proclaims a new deity who, according to public record, and scans it was an executed criminal.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much that he is telling them that says, prove the world view of you wrong.
Yeah. Remember that, okay? Like, Jesus, the way that he was crucified, would have caused even people who were following him, were interested and saw and liked what they saw, to see how things unfold would have challenged their view of things. Because in an honor-shame society, the way that Jesus died, that was the most shameful way. And surely God would not allow an honorable person to die this way. And surely, right, if Jesus was who he said he was, it wouldn't have gone down this way, okay? But the resurrection is what began to challenge, no doubt, challenge some people like, hold on, wait a minute. If that's the case, he's been vindicated. He's not dishonorable. And what he did and who he was and what he said, right? But the challenge would be to continue to live in such a way where it does exactly what Paul just said, right? Demonstrates to the world, reflects to the world, right? Something other than the perspective, the impression, or the conclusion that they had received. Scott? Right. Yeah.
One follow-up is that from our own news headlines in our own society now, those who proclaim anything that they want concerning Jesus misappropriate him. And so we've almost got the opposite challenge right now, but still the same type of tension.
Yeah. And I like that because what it says is that we can have a sense of what it could have been like, right? Use your imagination that God has given you, right? They were humans just like us. We can step into that and have a pretty decent, I think, understanding of what it potentially, right, was like and feel and experience. Like really step into the story, okay? Because in a lot of ways, our experiences aren't much different. Same challenges, different clothes, right? Right, thankfully. Okay, all right, so and when I look at Paul, man, he is like gentle and sensitive and compassionate, and he's like, yeah, it's so good. All right, so just keep that in mind, right? But by doing that, it would challenge them internally going back to redefining what's socially acceptable, right? Sitting at the same table with, I mean, think about the Jews would have struggled with sitting at the table next to who? Yeah, like you name it, right? No matter what they smell like it would have been a struggle, okay? And the same would be true for others as well. A lot of the I believe personally, a lot of the challenges you see in 1 Corinthians is a result of that very thing. Those who are being filled and those who were going hungry in connection to the communion, Lord's Supper, yeah. They had certain values, especially when it came to eating in homes and places where people sat, and yeah, there's a lot there, and that's a part of it. They wrestled with what they were accustomed to, and then what this new norm is supposed to look like. Okay, how I accept you. I think Paul's response to, hey, greet another with a holy kiss was a challenge, right? Because you have a church that is filled with people who, this is their only family now as a result of the disruption that it has caused. Okay. Let's look at chapters 1 through 3. I'm just going to give you a quick idea of what Paul's talking about, and then I want us to read verses 1 through 10. And I want us to focus specifically on the fact that Paul is celebrating their faith, okay? And in doing so, it does so much here. I wish we had 3 hours to sit with just this, okay? I'd be excited. You'd probably fall asleep. But I'm telling you, it's good. There's some good stuff in here for us to think about. All right, so Paul starts with a prayer, verses 1 through 5. Now, we say this structure is very loosely. This is a letter, okay? It's a letter. And we put verses and chapters to it. So the breakup is, we hold this loosely. There's a prayer of thanksgiving, opens up the first section, and the second section is verses 6 through 10, retells the story of their conversion, where their entire lives, both private and social, okay, those things, you can't separate them, were permeated with institutions and practices that honored what? Greek and Roman gods, okay? This changing of allegiance came at a cost, did it not? Yes, it would come at a cost to the city, especially in that city in which they lived. But here's the thing. Paul talks about this, their overwhelming love of Jesus and the hope of his return made it all worth it, okay? Chapters 2, verses 1 through 12, Paul talks about his mission and the relationships. This is where he starts talking about, remember what we did not do and how we treated you and how you treated us and what that was like? Keep that in mind. He talks about his mission, his relationships developed. He uses these intimate metaphors of how they treated Paul and how he treated them. And here's the thing. I love this. He says, we shared the good news, but we shared more than just the good news. We shared our lives together, right? Think about that. Like Paul, as a leader, comes in, and they're treating him like children. This is Paul's metaphor. It's how Paul received it. What does that tell you about Paul? What was his approach? What's the message that is coming across here? Okay, but when they came in, he says, the example he uses is, you guys treated us like we were your children. And he accepted that, received that. What's he doing? Yeah. Look what he does, right? He's like, he humbles himself, right? They receive the nurture and the care and the love of the community around them. They didn't come in all high and mighty. They came in as, hey, we're one of you. Oh, you're going to care for us. They receive their hospitality as such, okay? Not like a benefactor would, but as a friend, okay, as family, all right? So many good things that we could talk about here. Verses 13 through 16, he talks about their common persecution, that together they were suffering, and their sufferings, as they're suffering together, are a way in which they're sharing in the sufferings of Christ. Verses 17 through chapter 3, verse 10, he talks about how he anguished over the hardships that they went through like how tough that was, but then how he was relieved when Timothy comes back with this report of how well they're doing, right? Like, could you imagine? I wonder if Paul expected them to be like, oh boy, there might be one or two left, right? And then he gets the word back, right? And he's filled with just joy. And that's the place from which this letter is being written, okay? And then chapter 3, verses 11 through 13, there's this prayer that links the first section and the second section together. Prays for endurance and introduces the topics he's going to address in the remainder of the letter. His prayer is that God will grow, right, their capacity to love, strengthen their commitment to holiness, and then fix their hope on the return of Jesus, okay? And remember, this is coming from a specific perspective to people who were dealing with some very specific things. They needed this, okay? They needed this. It's like a love letter. It really is, okay? All right. So, any questions about that? So just kind of keep that in mind as you read through First Thessalonians. These are the movements, if you will, okay, within the letter. That's what we see. Any questions or comments about that? Good. Let's talk about celebration. All right. This is Paul celebrating their faith. Okay. Before we get there, somebody read for us verses 1 through 10 of chapter 1. Okay. What's Paul doing here? Yeah, he's building them up, okay? Paul is teaching them how to see themselves, okay? How they already are. It's helpful, I think. Now, try to understand this and think about this from the perspective of a new community struggling, okay? It's hard for me to even just imagine the depth and the intensity of the struggle that they would have been going through, right? The tension that is happening here. But I think Paul is teaching them how to see themselves, okay? As a new group, as a new community, this new identity. They're being reoriented, okay? Now, listen, that's not something people did very easily. We still don't do that very easily, okay? This is not something that was done that happens very easy at all. And so from that perspective, understand when Paul is telling these are things they need to hear. These are public affirmations, okay, of what they've gone through, what they've done, their response, what the Lord has done, okay? They needed to hear these things. And by him publicly affirming these things, what would it do to them? What would it do for them? Encourage them. It would strengthen and reinforce, if you will, even this new identity, okay? As individuals and as a group especially, okay? That's super important. Could help strengthen their confidence. What else? Their resolve, right? Their resilience to stand firm and to be faithful. Like they can persevere, right? And as a group, right, by looking at what Paul's saying here, as a group, now just do your, like, I know it's hard, okay, or it can be. Maybe you're better at this than I am, but I'm just trying to put myself in their shoes, not knowing what I know, and that's hard. But I'm reading this, and I'm like, that's what you see in me? That's what you see in us? Oh, look, that's what we did. That is us. That's, right? And so by him publicly affirming them with all of these things, okay, like, they could say, this is who we are. Like, this is who we are, and this is what matters. And it's something that I think that they needed to hear, especially in their context and what they're going through, okay? They need to hear these things. Why? Why did they need to hear these things? Everybody needs feedback, okay? They're being attacked, okay?
They're in a wider group than they can actually see. They have a community that goes outside of them.
Okay. Part of something way bigger. Okay? What else?
When they see God's word, this becomes a truth source.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It's like God affirms. And I believe that's what Paul talks about in Colossians, I think it's chapter 2, where he talks about, our translations say stand firm in the faith, but the word firm there actually has to do with, it's like when you go to, who are those people who witness and they sign? Man. Notary. Yeah. I did not sleep well last night. Sorry.
In fact, you don't often need a notary, it's a good thing.
Okay, good. I'll take it. So when you have to have somebody witness something, they're affirming something that this is true. It's a word in the Greek that had to do with somebody saying this is legal and binding, and they're putting their stamp on it, right? They're affirming it. Our translations use the word oftentimes stand firm, and so we look at that like it's us. We're doing it, but actually it's something that it's happening to us. We're receiving it, and the point I believe Paul is making here is as you become more and more familiar with what it's like to abide in Jesus, to follow Jesus, to be in this community of Jesus, God is going to affirm you. In other words, things are going to be happening that you can say, okay, thank you, Lord. That was God. Thank you. And to Chuck's point, that's exactly what this would do, okay? And in fact, Paul mentioned some of this that we'll get to at some point, all right? So they needed to hear these things because they're new, and new associations like this are fragile, right? Think about how we create friendships, make connections, right? It takes a little bit, right? At first, it's kind of like, we'll see. We'll figure this out. Yeah, you have to build some trust, right? Like, I mean, unless well, about to get some husbands in trouble here. Think about it. Like when you meet your spouse, now when you met them, did you know immediately? Yes. Right answer. Right? But she may not have, right? So she needed some time to I don't know about this. I'm not sure, right? 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 All right. So, anyways, new associations like this they're in a vulnerable situation, and it can be fragile. It can break apart very easy, right? And hearing things like this can help build this up, strengthen it some. Okay, Abby? Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Because my wife and I are the same. I'm upstream, she's all the way downstream. I'm a visionary and an inventor, and she's over here in the weeds doing all the hard work. Okay. Okay. But it works, right? We've grown from that. Okay. So good points here. So it's a fragile group. that has external pressures that are coming in, you're feeling that, right? That would threaten cohesion, would it not? Could it not? Yeah. But a big part of creating identity as a group is what? Shared experiences, right? Anybody been on trek before? You ever, yeah, right? You ever go just on a retreat somewhere? It could have been work. You ever went on a mission trip? I mean, we went to Honduras one year, and wow, just the connections you make when you're serving alongside people. Me and this other guy, I hardly knew him. We spent all day with literally a pickaxe in the mountain, breaking up rock. Looked like a chain gang type thing. We were building a path, though, a sidewalk from the boys' home to the road, because when it rained, that field would be flooded, and it's filled with sewage and all the other things, and trying to get the kids out of that. And so to lay the foundation for the sidewalk, you got to dig certain depth, and we're in the front lines, swinging pickaxes all day. It was a lot of fun. We really got to know each other, okay? But shared experiences, we understand this, right? They help create some like cohesion, and this is part of what they have. And Paul is reminding them of this. But it's not just external pressures, right? Because external pressures can create what? Internal anxieties, okay? Which kind of goes back to something Abby said and Chuck was talking about. Like, yeah, the differences. Sometimes the pressures cause us to focus on what we don't have in common, right? But those internal anxieties could continue to increase the fragmentation within groups. This is just sociology 101. Is that the right word? I mean, it's just how groups are formed, okay? So it's good to keep all that in mind, especially when they would have seen themselves as group. They had group identity. Their identity came from a group, okay? That's important, okay? So as we read verses 1 through 10, let's think about it from their perspective, okay? What might they have seen? What would they have heard from the Apostle Paul? Look at verses 1 through 10. What do you, don't just repeat what Paul said, but as you read this, like, what's it telling you? Like, think about it from their perspective. Like, what would they have received from this? Like, okay, you're telling me that's what hey, we did that. That's who we are? What's that? Their examples, okay? Yeah. Think about that, which points back to something Paul was saying that I love it, especially because it gets to that point towards the end of what, Paul doesn't jump right in there. He builds up to that point where he's pointing out that there is a much larger network that you're a part of. And look, word about who you are and what you have done, what you've gone through, what God is doing among you has spread so much that we don't have to say anything. Like, oh, wow. Now, here's the other thing. They relied on this type of information transfer, okay? Because they didn't have email. They weren't texting. There's no phone calls here, right? They relied upon information to travel in such a way. Now, Paul is talking about this happening in a very extraordinary way. Okay? What else? Okay. Right. Yeah. Did you guys hear that? Like, imagine their thought of, they're watching Paul and Silas and that whole group and how they're presenting themselves and what they're doing. And there's no question that they would have raised them up on a pedestal in some way, right? Looked at them, admired them. They had a certain perspective of them. And now Paul is saying, hey, you guys are mimicking us. You modeled us. Like, we were a model for you, and you are now a model of us, right? Like, what would that do? Who, me? Paul?
One of the pressures in a social group is to be just a social group. We got a nice social club, we go out and eat, we're nice to each other, we have special projects. Wow, this is a lot of fun and really nice. I mean, that's not where they are yet.
Right.
But when you're in the middle of a growth thing,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily notice how far you've come.
Yeah.
And so, oh, I grew a quarter inch last week. I grew a quarter inch the week before.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. And somebody comes up and says, you have grown a whole foot.
Yeah.
And it's,
Like
I
what?
didn't notice
What?
that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I didn't notice that at all.
Yeah. That's good.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So you see how these are things that they needed to hear. Chuck? Mm-hmm. 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 Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, 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 yeah. So we could get a sense of why Paul did this, why it was needed, and maybe even how they would have received it, right? Like when you read this, I think if you can narrow it down. Listen, it's like Paul saying, you belong, you matter, what you're doing is working, God's among you, we see you, and the rest of the church sees you as well, right? You're not alone in this, right? So, like, it's very interesting. And Paul's celebrating. Like, he's celebrating because he has reasons to celebrate, okay? And I really wanted to get to this part. Paul has reasons to celebrate, right? Let's start. We got 3 minutes. We're going to start it anyway. And here's my challenge to you, okay? Read through verses 1 through 10 and think about it from the perspective of, okay, reason to celebrate. And then ask yourselves, what do we have reason to celebrate? Okay? Like, I could say a whole lot more, but I won't. Let's go. Reasons to celebrate. Verse 1. Verse 3. Verse 4. Chapter 2, the family metaphors. Right? What is that pointing to? For them. From their perspective. It's okay, you can say it. It's on the board. A new status. I know we don't look at it that way because we don't live in their culture. But from their perspective, all this is pointing to this new status that Paul is celebrating. Look, verse 1. God what? The Father. We pass over that. Might not mean a whole lot to us. God Father. You know what it was like? Worshiping Greek and Roman gods, or believing that you lived under the pantheon of gods and what they were about? Whew. Cruel, fickle, narcissistic. Everything they did was about themselves. And if they ever came down to visit you, humans, what was it for?
Look at them.
Yeah. Okay.
That's even where we get our word narcissistic. It's from one of the names of the gods.
Okay. So listen, referring to God as Father from a Greco-Roman perspective, I would have, number one, I thought that probably would have been a little bit challenging. But it sets this precedent of how to view God. Father. So God's Father. And remember, identity is connected to what? In the Greco-Roman world, in the biblical world, identity is connected to what? Family. Family. Okay? Here's the thing. Oh, it's so good. And we're out of time. Man. But see, but then you're going to forget and I have to remind you of everything, and then we're going to run out of time again. No. Identity was, just one point. Identity was connected to family. You receive your identity. You were born into a family. The challenges of thinking about having a different identity goes beyond even the scope that we could talk about here, but it's part of why Nicodemus struggled with what Jesus said about being born from above or born again. But Paul is, listen, now they're a part of this new family. Their identity is being reoriented, okay, and elevated. Because who's your father now? Right? Who's your father now? This is so good, right? I think it is. This is great, man. There's so many golden nuggets